Thank you so much. It really is a huge honour to be here. This is my first ever book of any kind, and obviously the first time I've read in Ottawa, and I really enjoyed hearing your poems. So that was really special, because we're doing this sort of cross-Canada tour, and it's been just us the whole time, and it's just really lovely to hear some other voices, so thank you for that. And I just want to add a thank you as well to the government of Yukon, who have helped me be here. And also, while I think of it, I'm doing my little tourism bit now. If you're interested in visiting Whitehorse, there is now a flight from Ottawa to Whitehorse, and it does stop at Yellowknife on the way. So if you fancy exploring the north, it's a lot easier. You don't have to go via Vancouver and then up again. So I'm going to start with a poem that's sort of inspired by my experience of moving from the UK to the Yukon. And one of the things that's really struck me about living in Whitehorse is the really strong First Nations culture there. Obviously there are no Aboriginals in Britain. Is this okay? Is it ringing or ringing? Should I step back a bit? Is that better? Let's see. Let me know. Just shout out if it's not working. It's still ringing? How's that? Is it me or I'm too close?
Give me a moment.
Sure.
I'll just move the slide down there and down there. Hello. Try that.
Thank you. How's that? Is that better? That sounds better to me. Yep. Great. What was I saying? Yeah, so First Nations culture is kind of Aboriginal culture doesn't exist, in the UK. So it's something that's really struck me. There are 14 First Nations in the Yukon, and 11 of them have actually settled their land claims and they're self-governing. So it's really interesting to be living and working in that environment. So I'll read a poem now. This is called Fish Lake Ridge. Water is thick where the Yukon River starts surging to the Bering Sea, rising with the blood of ancestors whose descendants watch over them as they stalk each fall, letting the bellied cow moose scratch through willow while they pierce and fell the bull. On Fish Lake Ridge, this other people's land, I stand on silver granite, dry with lichen. Stepping to the liquid view, I startle a ptarmigan, rising low to cling to camouflage. Liver of vitamin A, breast of vitamin B. I know what can be done with a gun and guts. No ancestors watch over me. I have no descendants to guard. My native land is a high street of Ford Fiestas parked outside a Tudor-fronted Tesco Metro selling tuna sandwiches. My territory is bounded by a fence my father creosotes every second summer. So I'm going to upset everyone now and read a poem that has snow in it, because I like doing that. And I know it's weird, but I really enjoy the winters in the Yukon. I've survived through 8 winters, and I'm always a bit sad when the snow goes. And I know it's unfashionable and in bad taste to say that when you've had such a long winter here. So this is a skiing poem and a bit of a relationship poem as well, and it's called Scientist. How is it I'm lost, yet you're not, although we're on the same blank trail? I'm sliding in your tracks, mostly because it's easier, not because I agree with where you're going. My skis slip, clack your backs when you stop abruptly before a bough across our path, slung with a slack rope of snow, a loop impossibly air-held, a single winter garland. You twist a wrist to flick a pole to break it. I shout don't, meaning many things. You say you need to see what holds it there. I say seeing means it won't be there anymore. While you talk of rhyming and colliding crystals, I recall my mother's oldest friend telling me her husband was the sort to pause to gaze at dewdrops. How, if I were lucky, I'd meet a man like him. Now you're saying that snowflakes, when they reach the ground, take up 10 times more space than rain. This next poem, we're still in the Yukon. I'm vegetarian, which works very well when you live in a city. I'm kind of an urban vegetarian. I like to think of myself. And living in the Yukon, the hunting culture is, of course, incredibly strong with the Aboriginal people and with a lot of people who live there who aren't Aboriginal too. And this poem is exploring what might happen if hunting came a little closer into my life. Year of the sheep. Our ancestors were cleared to the cliffs in the year of the sheep. Children and livestock rock-tethered against the wind that blew boats to New Caledonia. Not everyone sailed. Some clung to the crags, while sheep sheared Scotland bare, making way for attrition by Munro baggers. You and I overshot our families by 3,000 miles and 200 years when we ran aground in the Yukon, high-jumping the 60th parallel. A new friend took you up ungrazed hills for days with guns, brought you back with sacks of bone and muscle. As his truck triumphed off, you stood in the driveway, threw up, and stayed outside to watch your vomit melt the snow. A month shy of Guy Fawkes night, you cut a bonfire out the back, a pyre to roast your vengeance meat. I brought you a mug of tea, flipped the memory card into black flames after I saw pictures of you, knees astride, pinning down Arctic willow, holding up the sheep's broad head by thick curled horns as long as your arms, nostrils blood-corked. You looked so surprised, as if you'd been expecting a woolly Scottish blackface ewe, but had slaughtered horned Cernunnos, the Celtic god of life. So this next poem, I'm in the Yukon and in Canada because I love the wilderness. I love the natural world, and there's a lot of it where I live. It's wonderful, but I'm just really bad at learning about what I'm looking at. And my husband is a biologist, and I just really admire how he spends hours. He can just sit and watch and look through telescopes and binoculars and learn all the bird songs. And it's something I don't know. I've got attention deficit disorder or something, but it doesn't go in. So this is called The Names of Things. How many of us look and listen as people tell us the names of natural things, wanting to know? You remember this purple and yellow now at your feet is prairie crocus. Pinker purple along July highways is fireweed. That's easy. You recognise the chickadee-dee's call, or it might be the song. You've learnt that the bird that bullets into woods as you cycle is an American robin, flying low to find berries, but not worms, not this far north where soil is undigested. Yet you never can remember the difference between a black spruce and a white, however often you're told white has longer needles. You'd think, living among millions of them, eating their spring tips, carrying that cat pee smell into your house each Christmas, you'd know it as parents know twins. You've been told to look at the ground. If it's wet, it's black, and if it's dry, it's white. But in spring and autumn, all the earth is drenched, and in winter there's the snow. Sometimes you know willows from alders, yet never have you recalled a mushroom's name the next day. It's not lack of interest. It's just there's never time to go over what you're told. Too many other things to do. On Sunday, you will walk this way again. You'll bring a guidebook, notebook, and camera. You'll stop right here, where the mountains are white sails upon a sea of spruce. You'll really look this time. You'll finally remember. I'm just going to read a poem which sort of explains the title of this book. It's The Fleece Era. And it's sort of, I just remember the very first time I saw the fabric fleece in the very early 1990s, and it was in Canada, this wonderful new world, of course. And I thought it was wonderful, and I wore lots of it, and I still do. And then I started thinking about where it came from, and it's an oil-based fabric. And so to me, it became a symbol of this oil age that we're living in. So this is called the Fleece Era. The man who pulled over was wearing the first fleece she'd ever seen, softer than a sweater, purple as Cadbury's chocolate. She would have touched it if he hadn't been in it. He picked up her pack and put it in his truck full of wood, and she told his tanned hands on the wheel she'd just found her way out of the biggest forest she'd ever almost got lost in. He said, "Look around, you're not out yet." She said, "What's it like living in a forest as big as a country?" He said, "It's hard to believe, but there are lands here where the forest doesn't grow, cities where burning wood is not allowed. Big deal," he said. "We can make sweaters out of plastic pop bottles, yet there are places where it's illegal to hang your washing out to dry, places where children never get the tips of their noses nubbed by the smell of photosynthesis as they pull a sun-dried t-shirt down over their heads." So this poem, well, I live in the Yukon, and I know it sounds very interesting, perhaps, or maybe that's not the word, bizarre, perhaps, but I live a very ordinary life. I go to work, I pay the mortgage, I have to read lots of emails at my desk every day. So this poem is just kind of exploring that wonderful work-life balance, perhaps. It's called Unraveled. By Friday nights, my brain was a net of dripping dead fish. Cycling home from work, my thoughts were bitmapped, the mistakes I'd made thudding to the tarmac. While emails subdivided, I'd lick my eyeballs, stick them to the television screen. I know now how much my mind can drink before the words drown. Lying here, unraveled, listening to the shimmer of wind in aspens, I wait for the crescendo to end. It will take more than this week of absence to wind my mind back in after 150 days of unspooling, sitting twisted in an adjustable chair, my brilliant brief career. A biro was always best for spooling tape back into a cassette, angled edges catching in sprocket teeth. It was everywhere in the 80s, shiny brown tape, tangled around lampposts, threaded through dual carriageway barriers. I thought it came from the tapes people chucked out of their car windows when Duran Duran snarled or snapped. Carol, driving me through London, said no, they were the devil's messy webs, encrypted satanic messages. She said cars crashed wherever they were tied. The Four Seasons never broke, however many times my mother played it. She loved to sing and drive. Winter wore out first, stretched until sound was see-through. But we couldn't throw Vivaldi out the window. I still have that tape, though I can't play it. No one has cassette players anymore. The devil has found other ways of getting messages to us. So I'm going to go somewhere warm now, if that's helpful. Well away from the Yukon. This is just a poem inspired by when I was 18 or so and backpacking and in the Caribbean, St. Maarten, and when you're traveling and you try and make connections, with a different culture, but sometimes, sadly, it doesn't always go quite how you want it to go. So this is called St. Maarten. The man on the airport bus takes me to a lady who smells of seagrass. She takes me to a room with a bed, a table, and a ceiling fan. I tell her I can't afford a room. That's why I have a tent. Oleanders and gum trees will screen a small blue dome. The room has a door that locks. I give the lady francs. I almost kiss her. The room I stayed in last night on Antigua was free. It had no lock. It belonged to a man who offered me a lift I took because I'd walked all day. He was proud of the house he'd built. It still smelt of wet cement. When I saw his wife's picture, he told me she was away, she wouldn't mind. I said I did. I watched the handle of the door to my room all night. I left too early for him to take me to the airport. I left a note to thank him for the room. I lock my door and walk to find a beach. I accept a lift because it's offered by a policeman. As he slows by the shore, I put my hand on the catch, remembering car doors lock. He asks me to stay with him. I tell him I have a room. He stopped the car by the time my foot is on the ground. I run across sand to sea. I stay in until I know I'll never get cold, somersaulting, stretched and weightless, letting water hold me in a handstand. A little girl is sitting by my towel. She lives over there, she says. She asks me where I'm from, tells me my skin is broken and will burn. When I've kept her too long, I tell her to go home. She says no one's there. We stand with sand on our knees. She holds out her hand for me to pay her for the time she's sold me. Okay, this is my last poem, and it's just to me shows that what I really love about poetry is that you can just write a poem about absolutely anything, and that's the magic of it for me, I think. You know, I used to think I had to travel and have experiences in order to be a writer. So this poem is just really about being in the kitchen and doing the dishes. It's called Earthtwin. The cat drinks from the sink. An onion skin floats to the floor. A scientist on the radio says, "We are always searching for other planets that can support human life." The onion skin splinters as I pick it up. If anyone ever asks whether I believe in life on other planets, I say yes right away. I don't need to think about it like I do with most questions. The scientist says, we're a universe in a multiverse. I consider an endless poem. His point, he tells us, as I crane the cat to the floor, is that there might be planets even more suitable for human life than ours. I use the dishcloth to wipe slivers of onion skin from the floor. It takes a day or so for me to comprehend he was talking about heaven. Thank you very much.